We've already talked about quite a few of PHP's data types. Primarily, we've been working with numbers, strings, and arrays. Constants are another data type, but unlike variables, their values cannot change. Whereas a variable is assigned a value via the assignment operator, constants are assigned values using the define function. I'm just going to go into my gallery.php page for a moment so I can show you some examples of what constants are going to look like. The rule of thumb when you're creating a constant is to use all capital letters. This is not a requirement, but it is how most people will work when they're working with constants. I'm just going to create some PHP on this page temporarily so I can show you an overview of how constants work, and then we'll use them a little bit more specifically for our project. So when we use the define function, we're going to then pass in the parentheses the constant name, and then that will be followed by a value. So as you can see, constants don't use the initial $sign as variables do, because constants aren't variables. Here's a couple of examples of constants that we can create in PHP. For instance, if I use the define function and pass in pi and then set the value to 3.14, this could be a way that I could use constants. If I want to print that, all I have to do is type print pi. I'm going to comment out the define constant name since that actually won't work right now, but I'll save this and we will refresh the screen, and you can see that the browser is now printing 3.14 as the value for the constant of pi. And as with any value in PHP, we're going to quote those that are strings, but not those that are numbers. So referring to constants is pretty straightforward. It is a little bit more complicated when you want to use constants within quotation marks. You can't print constants with single or double quotation marks like this. So if I try to print the value of pi using a print statement, either with the double or single quotation marks, all I'm going to get is a string that's going to list out that information. That's not very useful to what I'm trying to do. So if you want to use the print statement and print out a constant in conjunction with a string of information, you'll need to use concatenation or multiple print statements. So if we put something like the value of pi is, and then if I close my double quotes and use a period and then list the constant name pi like this, and we save, and I'm going to comment out just print pi, you can now see that it's going to state the value of pi is 3.14. This would work in the same way if we were to use single quotations instead of double quotations. So if I save with the single quotations, we get the exact same results. Along with the define function for creating constants, we also have a defined function, which is going to contain a trailing d. This function returns true if the submitted constant has not been defined. It's often used as the basis for a conditional. So we might usually see defined used in an if statement where we said if, and then in the parentheses defined, and then we have the constant name, and then we could put our condition. So this is just a little sample of how constants work. I'm going to get rid of this code on the gallery page. And what we're going to do is we're going to use constants so that we can display different page titles for each page that we're on. Currently, if we look at our pages, the page title is going to be the same on all of the pages, and that's because the page title is being generated via our header, so this title is being pulled in. It is common if you're building a website that you would want to have unique titles for each page, so we can use constants to be able to accomplish that. We're going to define a constant in the parent script that will then be printed by the header file. This technique works because any variable or constant that exists in the parent document before the include or require calls are available to the included file. It's as if the included file were part of the parent file. So I'm going to go into my About page, and before I actually include the header.html, I'm going to create my constant. And at this point, I don't need any of these statements, so I will just delete these. I'm going to type out define, and then in the parentheses, in all caps, I'll write title inside of quotes, and then I'm going to put the actual title that I want for this page. So this page is going to have a title of Nessie, history and details. So this statement is defining the page title as a constant. Then we're going to include the header file. Now, currently, if we try to save this page and view it in the browser, we don't see any difference, and that's because we want to modify our header file so that we can take the constant into account. Now I'll go into my header.html file, and we're going to eliminate the information that exists in between the title tags. And what we want is we want the page title to be determined on a page-by-page basis. So we're not going to hard code it into this page. In place of the deleted text, so in between the title tags, I'm going to add some PHP script. We're going to use a conditional, and we'll say if, and here we're going to use defined, and then we're going to pass on our constant of title, and we'll open up the curly braces, and we're just going to print title, and then I'm going to make an else statement, and our else statement is going to print out the message that will appear in case no title constant has been defined on that particular page. This will ensure that if the developer doesn't add the constant of title, this will be the fallback or default title that's going to appear. So if I save this and we now refresh, and I'm currently on the About page, you can see that the title is now showing our custom title, Nessie, History and Details. But if I go to the Gallery page, it's still going to show the fallback title. So we're going to go into the Gallery page, and before we bring in our header.html file, I'm going to use my define function. I'm going to define the title constant, and we'll have this be Nessie Photo Gallery, and we'll save. And if I refresh now, you can see that we have a custom title that's appearing on the Gallery page. So custom title on the About page, and then the home page is using our default or fallback title. So remember that our conditional that we're using right here is seeing if the title constant has been defined, and if it has, we're going to print the value of the title constant. If the title has not been defined, we're just going to print the default value for the title. The formal rules for naming constants are exactly like those for variables, except that we omit the $sign. Constant names must begin with a letter or an underscore. They can contain any combination of letters, numbers, and the underscore, and they are case sensitive. The added benefit of using constants is that they're global in scope. It's also worth noting that the value of a constant can never be changed. A constant can't be deleted either.